Welcome to the House of Kenaz, episode 1. In this podcast, I discuss several things. One, the mission that I am hoping to achieve with this project that I'm titling The House of Kenaz. The second, I spent some time going over the current astrological placements and historical placements of the outer planets and try to talk about how that is a signal that we are indeed in really revolutionary and quick changing times. Third, I talk about how the new moon in Leo is approaching on July 24th. I'm filming this little intro bit on July 18th, and I give a little tarot card reading about how best to utilize the energies to make the new moon the best new moon you can make it. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them on Spotify, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the House of Kenaz. And you may wonder, what's going on here? What is this? Well, this is a project that I have envisioned almost 2 years ago. And this is going to be an amalgamation of all the knowledge that I have, and also a place for me to build upon that knowledge, not only through application, but through study. And it's called the House of Kenaz essentially because during a period of time this year, I kept getting this card, this rune that is called Kenaz. And if you can guess, this podcast is going to be a metaphysical centered podcast. If you're looking at this podcast on video, you can see this card in which a hand is holding fire, right? And that fire is representing transformation, evolution, right? This is the card of Kenaz. And during the earlier parts of 2025, this was a card that I was repeatedly getting in my personal readings. And I felt very drawn to it. And I felt like that was a sign. And then I was waiting for the rest of the name to come. And the idea of calling it the House of Kenaz just came to me maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I was laying in bed and I was playing around with like the spirit of Kenaz, the oracle of Kenaz. Like I was playing around with all these variations. But the name the House of Kenaz, there's something about like, when fashion designers call themselves like the House of Dior or so forth, like there's something of a gravitas there. But also, what I wanted is to provide a container in which I can invite other people who are interested in the subject to be part of the House of Kenaz, the members of Kenaz. And so it's not something that I am just solely going to carry. I think the name provides a lot of space for growth and evolution. But let me I'm always so bad at introducing myself just because I always want to get to the point. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. So my name is Stephen Perry, and I studied mathematics and statistics, and I work as a statistician. And you may say, how does that even apply? How does that even apply? When you are reading tarot cards, when you are reading an astrology chart, you have so much data. And similar to when you are dealing with a spreadsheet, you got a lot of numbers, right? In statistics, what we do is we boil all those numbers down into a smaller set of numbers, right? You got a column of all these, like, let's say, weights of people. You push that down, you get an average, you get a single number, your report, right? Similarly, you can get the standard deviation to describe the spread of the data. Same thing goes when you're dealing with these metaphysical tools, right? You're getting a lot of information. It's about synthesizing it. It's about finding the patterns. And the thing that I have studied my whole life is patterns, right? A lot of people think mathematics and accounting are the same thing. They're not. They're not the same thing. You can take math courses on YouTube for free if you want to learn, but mathematics is a lot about pattern recognition, but it's also about fine details and really being precise with language, being precise about assumptions, understanding the confines in which a statement may or may not be true, and also expanding upon what has already been based in the foundation. Anyway, so my goal here is to kind of integrate the more scientific experience that I have had for my career, right? I have studied math for 20 years now, and I've been a practicing statistician for a decade. And I have been using tarot cards since I was 15, 16. And it has always been a practice of like self-evaluation, of reflecting, of seeing, what are my responses to these cards? Because the way that I'm interpreting the cards are going to be totally different, perhaps, to how you interpret the cards. And that's just because we have different perceptions. But seeing the cards and understanding their relationship to a question I may have asked, it gives me a clue to perhaps what's happening underneath the surface. It allows me to tap into places that may be harder to tap into my head. All right. So that's a lot of information here. And I'm going to tell you that my goal with this podcast at the moment, because I don't want to overwhelm myself, my goal is to do a monthly podcast, kind of just give the overlay of like perhaps what's happening astrologically, and pull a few tarot cards and kind of see what message the cards are giving. Like that's kind of a general sense of what I'm going for here as a place to start. Now, I do hope to have more venues for education and learning. I'm always reading up on different topics, and I would love to have other people who are interested in those topics to build a community with me. And that's one thing that also motivates me in making this podcast, because I feel like my interests have always been so um, so diverse that it's hard for me to find a single people that are interested in all the things that I'm interested in. Again, this is like a Mars in Sagittarius conjunct my Uranus in Sagittarius. Okay, there's a lot that I'm interested in. And there was a period of a lot of my life in which I would tap down on certain interests for the ease of other people that I was associating with, kind of to the point where I don't care anymore. And it's important for me to really spend time with all of my interests, and really meeting people and uh, finding people that are that have similar interests. Anyway, the reason why I am recording this when I am, so I'm recording this on July 14th. It is currently 9:56 as I speak, p.m. Eastern Time. The reason why I'm recording this is I I've been waiting for this time, this period of the year to start this project. And again, this has been in my head for almost 2 years. This idea came to me in December, not last year, but the year before. So 23, December 23, I was like, okay, like this, I want to move more into this direction. Reason being, like I've gone through periods of time when I do like tarot card readings on Instagram, on TikTok, right? I enjoy that. But I want a more like focused place where I can just have that content stored. And I can have a place where I have a record of the readings that I have done and so forth. That brings me to something. So I am keeping a journal just for this podcast. That is how dedicated I am. My goal with this journal is to, if I'm pulling cards, to keep a track of all the cards. And if you're interested, if you've never done tarot, or if you've done tarot for many years, I will say one thing I have done is I have kept a journal. And I started this journal. I should probably bring it downstairs, but I don't feel like going and getting it. I think I got this journal, maybe it was 2005, 2006, somewhere around there. So I started recording every reading I ever gave myself 20 years ago. And again, I've been reading tarot cards for more than 20 years. So we're going on close to 25 years that this has been part of my life. And it's so invaluable. What I have found is in my notebooks, I will write down, like I usually do, like a Celtic cross. And in my notebooks, I will write down the cards that I pulled, the positions in which they were in. Then I will write kind of my predictions, like how I feel about those cards, given what I am currently going through at that time, right? And when I cast my cards, I usually am giving myself a personal reading every 2 to 3 months. So usually when I give my reading, that's kind of the time frame that I'm thinking about. So I write down like a little paragraph of like what I think it's about. And then when I'm sitting down and giving myself the following reading after that, so 2 to 3 months later, then I write down what actually happened. And I then can map on the correspondence and I can see how good my prediction was. So if you want to get good at your predictions, at reading tarot, of understanding the diversity and the different ways a card can express itself, use yourself as a research subject. That's what I will add. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. I'm also using this notebook to write some notes. So I spent like 2 hours before I started recording this to write down some astrological notes because this is what I was this is the thing that like propelled me. Actually, this is the thing that got me out of my like, do I want to do it? Like, do I really need to do it? This is the thing. Okay. And I was like, oh, I should look up like what's happening in the next new moon. So we have a we have a new moon happening in Leo on July 24th at 3:12 p.m. Eastern time. So July 24th is 10 days away. Okay. Now, why why do I care about this new moon? So new moons in general are just a time in which it's a time for new beginnings. It's a time for seeding. So I think what better thing to anchor this project on than a new moon, right? Like if I'm going to start something, why not associate it with a new moon? And to have it in Leo and to be uh, in the public eye, being creative, being visible. Yeah, right. But then, so I looked at the astrological chart, and it is so the new moon is when the sun and the moon are in the same position. So the sun and the moon are going to be at like 2 degrees of Leo, right? That's when that happens. 3:12. At the same time, Pluto is going to be opposite that new moon, right? It's going to be opposite the sun, opposite the moon. Pluto is sitting in Aquarius at 2 degrees. So to me, I looked at that and I was like, that's that's a lot. That's thinking about a new beginning that's connected to forced evolution, connected to transformation. Because when you think about Pluto, it is a time of um it's a time of transformation. It's a time of growth. um it's not always pretty, right? Like, and often when the moon is opposite Pluto, it's usually a news day, right? Like if you pay attention to the cycle of the moon and you look at the news, the days that the moon is opposite Pluto, usually that's like a more news heavy day than other days, right? It doesn't mean that there's always going to be something like big that's happening, right? It's usually something newsworthy. Now, having the sun also there makes you feel like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of energy there. The sun being Leo, like it makes you think, yeah, something could happen. Now, on top of that, we also have Mars conjuncting the South Node. And I think that's really interesting as well, because I've been in the past few years, I've been tracking Mars and how Mars interacts with all the planets during its transits. So to me, when I looked at those positions, I said, okay, like if I were to pick a date when I think something drastic could happen, um, it would be around this new moon. Am I saying that there's going to be some attack, some crazy thing? No. Could there be? Yeah. Yeah. There always could be, right? But the thing is with this astrology, and perhaps we'll get into this, perhaps we won't. The astrology of the times of this great year of 2025 really suggests a time where a lot of our old ways of being, old ways of doing things are just changing. It really suggests a time of change. Usually, change is not something that people voluntarily do, right? We often change because we're forced to. We get sick, we get an injury, right? Which then changes our behaviors. We didn't take on those new behaviors because we wanted to. We were presented with a situation in which we were forced to adapt. And in astrology, when you look at the outer planets, and when I talk about the outer planets, I'm talking about Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, right? Those outer planets, they take quite a bit of time to change astrological signs, right? So when we're looking at Uranus, about 7 years. Neptune's about like 14 years, 12, 14 years. Pluto depends on the sign. It can be 20 years. It could be 12 years, I think, in Sagittarius. So Pluto's is like in a different elliptical orbit than the other planets. Point being is Pluto finally moved into Aquarius. It was doing this dance back and forth like in 2023 and 2024. 2024, it moved into Aquarius and no longer is dancing back and forth between Aquarius and Capricorn. So in 2024, November 2024, we had this shift in Pluto where now it is in Aquarius. 2025, we're doing a dance with Neptune and Uranus, where Neptune just entered Aries this spring, and it's going to go back into Pisces in the fall, but it's doing this dance back and forth. It's going to go back. It's in Aries now, right? So it's in the sign that it will harbor new energy. Uranus just entered Gemini last week of this recording, and it will also do this dance back and forth between Gemini and Taurus. So Uranus is now in the sign that also will harbor this new energy, this new world order, let's say, because in 2026, like once these planets stop doing their dances, Pluto will be in Aquarius for like 20 years. Neptune's going to be in Aries for 14 years. Uranus is going to be in Gemini for 7 years. So like those positions will be there for quite some time. But this period of time, 2024 to 2026, is this kind of like dance back and forth where things are changing. And I don't have an audience, so I hope you're enjoying this. I'm gonna just keep going forward. Okay. So I did a little research this evening, as I do, and I looked up the astrological chart when Uranus was discovered. So Uranus was discovered by William Herschel, right? And just a little historical fact, before Uranus was named, it was called Herschel after its discoverer, right? And other side notes, Uranus, for people, like there's a period of time that people that now identify as gay, right? Like in the 1800s, gay people were called Uranians, right? So Uranus is this planet that is identified with queerness. And typically, whenever Uranus is playing, interacting with some of the planets, it brings the unexpected. It does things its own way, right? There is this quality of Uranus that it's going to do what it wants to do. Okay. And so Uranus was discovered on March 13th, 1781 in, I did not write this down, but I believe it was in Bath, UK. And when it was discovered, Uranus was in Gemini. Which is interesting. Also, when it was discovered, there were some aspects that were happening. So the sun was square Uranus, Mars was opposite Uranus, and Saturn was also opposite Uranus. So there was like this Mars Saturn conjunction happening that was opposite Uranus. So again, I think that that's kind of interesting there, that this discovery of Uranus happened when Uranus was in Gemini. And then for fun, I also, okay, so so I talked about how all the outer planets are, by like mid 2026, I believe, all the outer planets are going to be in their new signs, right? One of the major astrological aspects that we are ramping up to is the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. Okay, this is something that's super close right now as I record this in July 2025. It won't be exact until February of 2026, but this Saturn conjunct Neptune, this happens about every 36 years. So in a lifespan, you may have 2 to 3 of them. The last time this happened was when the Berlin Wall came down. Whenever we have this Saturn conjunct Neptune, it is about the dissolving of boundaries. So the Berlin Wall coming down is like it's so close to a literal representation of what that archetype represents. Okay. However, when Neptune was discovered in 1846, I did not write down the date for some reason in my notes, but when I looked at the astrological chart, it was conjunct Saturn. So I think that that's kind of cool that when we discovered Neptune, we discovered it because we could see Saturn, and we found Neptune also in the same astrological position as Saturn. And Saturn was the farthest out planet that we could see up until we discovered Neptune in 1781, right? Like that's the farthest planet. 1781 wasn't that far ago, right? So if you think about from 1781 before all the way back, with the human eye, they could see up to Saturn. That's what we can see, right? Up to Saturn. So that's why Saturn is always associated with time, right? Because it was the furthest out planet that we could see, Saturn. So this is also why you'll hear a lot, maybe I'll talk about at one point like Saturn cycles, right? Because these, again, we typically will go through 3 or so Saturn cycles in a lifetime. And these Saturn cycles, it's a way to kind of track one's evolution from, your first Saturn cycle is like up until the age of, let's say 27, 28, 29. You're an astrologer doesn't consider you an adult until you've completed your first Saturn cycle. So once you're done with your first Saturn cycle, then your second Saturn cycle is, around like, let's say 28 to like 56, 57 or so. That's your second cycle. And then 58 to mid 80s or so. Third Saturn cycle. Fun fact is when I am speaking, some facets of my mental capabilities are turned off. So even though I'm a mathematician, doing a lot of calculations while I'm speaking, it's kind of difficult. Kind of difficult. I recognize that now. Okay. The other thing that I want to make note of, again, so Uranus just moved in to Gemini last week. And I just looked up the astrological charts for 3 major wars that America has been involved in. So when I looked at the Revolutionary War, at the start of the Revolutionary War, which was April 19th, 1775, Uranus was at 0 degrees, 34 minutes of Gemini. Okay. In the Civil War, which started April 12th, 1861, Uranus was at 9 degrees of Gemini. In World War II, which started September 1st, 1939, Uranus was at 21 degrees of Taurus. It ended at 17 degrees of Gemini. Point being, it's this. In these 3 major wars, sure, America's participated in other wars and other proxy wars, we know, okay? In these 3 wars, Uranus was traversing Gemini. In the Revolutionary War and World War II, it was, Revolutionary War, it was all a Gemini, and then the first part of Cancer. In the American Civil War, it was 9 degrees of Gemini to 28 degrees Gemini. So essentially the second and third decan. In World War II, we got 21 degrees of Taurus and 17 degrees Gemini. So again, it's that first half of Gemini. So there's that, right? Then we got in the American Revolutionary War, if I look at Neptune, we got Neptune ranging from 20 degrees of Virgo when it started to 8 degrees Libra. In the Civil War, we got, technically it started on the very end minutes of Pisces. Most of the time people will just say, because it was the next day, April 13th, 0 degrees Aries to 9 degrees Aries. And then World War II, we got 22 degrees of Virgo and 5 degrees Libra. Point being is this. So if you think about our 12 zodiac signs, right? Aries is the first zodiac sign. And it's the first one because in our Western tropical system, we anchor it with the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. And so Aries is the start of the spring equinox. The sign opposite Aries is Libra, right? So 6 signs, right? If Aries is the first sign, 1 plus 6 is 7. The 7th astrological sign is Libra. So, point being is that in these 3 wars, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and World War II, Neptune was on that Aries Libra axis. It did cross that Aries Libra axis, the world axis, some people may call it. So I think that's interesting. If I look at Pluto, at the start of the Revolutionary War, it was at 26 degrees of Capricorn to 8 degrees of Aquarius. The Civil War, 8 degrees Taurus to 13 degrees Taurus. And World War II, 2 degrees Taurus, 10 degrees. Take that back. World War II, 2 degrees Leo, 10 degrees Leo. The thing that's really interesting here is fixed signs, right? So fixed signs are the signs that happen in the middle of a season, right? So in the middle of spring, we have Taurus season. In the middle of summer, we have Leo, right? In the middle of winter, we have Aquarius season, right? If we think about the middle of autumn, we have Scorpio. But we're not talking about Scorpio here. So at the moment, Pluto is in Aquarius. And the thing that seems to be implicit in this is that in these 3 wars, Pluto's always in a fixed, it crosses into a fixed sign. And fixed signs tend to be stubborn, and Pluto is all about growth. And where else do you need to be growing when you are in a stubborn place and if you're in a fixed place? Now, I'm sure that there's some people who may criticize this analysis, and yeah, there's something to say about the fact of like, do the planets have influence on us if we haven't discovered them yet, right? Like, By World War II, sure, we have discovered Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. But during the American Civil War, we did not know of Pluto, right? We had Uranus and we had Neptune. We did not have Pluto. And then in the Revolutionary War, again, that started in 1775. Uranus was discovered in the middle of the Revolutionary War. So we did not have Neptune and Pluto. So some people say, well, you can't really look at Pluto for the Revolutionary War. And I say I still think it's useful information. Sure, it may be more on the subconscious, unconscious level. That's possible, but it's still affecting things. It's still data. It's still information. There's still a pattern. And so I'm looking at it. So to recap, and hopefully not to scare you, this is about, again, my love of pattern recognition and also recognizing the energy at hand and knowing how to use it for your own evolution, for your own growth, right? Like these times, this is kind of like a potential fast forward button. Like you could grow, like you could basically be applying like miracle growth to your evolution if you so desire, if you so choose to study astrology, really understand where planets are falling in your chart and understand what houses they're falling into and how you could best use that for your mission in life. But let me kind of recap this. So we currently have Pluto in Aquarius, which is a fixed sign. That is something that occurred in all three of these wars. Okay. Neptune. We currently have Neptune in Aries. And Neptune, the Civil War, you'll hear astrologers say the Civil War started when Neptune entered 0 degrees Aries. Okay. In these other wars that I brought in, the American Revolutionary War and World War II, Neptune was always in a position which it was opposite Aries. So it's either within Aries or it's in a position in which it crosses 0 degrees Aries and is opposite that point. Uranus. Again, we currently have Uranus at about 0 degrees, 30 something minutes of Gemini. So that is exactly the position during the revolution, when the Revolutionary War, the American Revolutionary War started. Then in the Civil War, it was in the later degrees, a little bit later in Gemini. And then in World War II is also in Gemini. So again, the position of the outer planets suggests war, but we also, when we're interpreting that, we have to think about the context of our times and what is war in this century. How does that differ from war 200, 300 years ago, right? Like Are we lining up men in the middle of the field and are we firing at people? Or are we, is war now just like doing targeted cyber attacks or targeting an electric grid? Um, I think that that's important because our idea of what war is contextual to the technology at hand. And technology is always changing. Hello, mathematics, right? Like, okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a tangent. I'm sure that I can talk a lot about this in the future, but math does not end. There are people getting PhDs in math, and part of the PhD experience is to expand our understanding of mathematics. Okay. Mathematicians, their job is only to do that, is only to expand. It is not to provide a context and application. Okay. That's someone else's job. A mathematician is just expanding the knowledge. Okay. Often that knowledge is utilized in military technology, and that's the evolution of things, people. Like that. How do we have the internet? How do we have this podcast if it wasn't for mathematics? How do we have anything if it wasn't for math, right? Math is always evolving. And as a consequence, um, so do our weapons, and so does the way that we conduct war. Um, so we have to think about, and the idea of like what is World War II? What is World War One? Right? Like these kind of we've given them names from an American perspective. We have to remember, like those are American perspective names. Um, and we give it this like the way that history is taught is it's like this thing started and this thing now ended and then another thing starts. That's not how if you're listening to this, you probably know that that's not how life works, right? There's multiple storylines happening simultaneously, just like astrology. There's multiple cycles that are happening simultaneously. Sometimes the cycles kind of overlap and something interesting happens. Um, and that is where we are. Okay, that is where we are. We have these planets that are in positions in which they were in the past when we as a country were at war. We as a country have never gone through a um, whole transit of Uranus going through Gemini. We've never gone through this whole transit without being in a major war in our existence as an American, yeah, America has never, in its conception, since its conception, it has never gone through the sign of Gemini without being in a major war. Okay, that's the thing. Then you got Neptune crossing that Aries Libra axis, and then you have Pluto in Aquarius in a fixed sign. And a lot of people will talk about like that's when the French Revolution, blah, 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 happening. But it's also our revolution as well. On top of that, we have this Saturn Neptune conjunction. And that's this energy that's kind of building up, where I think that that's the catalyst for breaking down something that is broken. That's my wish, right? Like the waves of Neptune, right? Neptune rules Pisces, right? And a lot of people have negative things to say about Neptune. Sure, it's about drugs, it's about illusion, but there is also something very spiritual where it's going to just hopefully just wash away some of the broken parts that Saturn is like, the structures. It's gonna wash away some things that are defunct and broken, and perhaps we can grow something new. Um, and with this new moon, so going back to the new moon, yeah, this new moon is really intense with all that added energy that I just gave you, right? This is the thing. These are the things that I think about the most. Everything else that I do is kind of a distraction from these thoughts. Um, with that new moon, it just seems very intense. Okay. This is the time where I personally am choosing to really focus on projects at home, getting my shit done, doing what I want to do, and I'm avoiding crowds. That's how I'm reading this energy. I don't want to deal with, there's a lot of chaotic energy out there, right? There's a lot of, I feel myself very sensitive to a lot of people. There's a lot of people that want to ignore the what's going on many different levels, whether it's politically, geographically, socially, climate change, science, whatever, right? They are holding on to this old world, right? That's exhausting. And but there's also a lot of like um energy that I think is trying to usher in something new, which I think is good, but it also can be quite overwhelming um, if it's not concentrated on like a particular uh, mission, a particular goal, right? So I think it's about making sure that you are using your energy to accomplish something that you want to accomplish. Anyway, so let's get to the cards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull three cards, and it's going to be focused on this new moon. So like what can we, how best to like prepare for this new moon? Like what's something that we should think about? What's good guidance around this new moon, given all the astrology that I just gave us. Right. Kind of see if you make it so that you can see this. All right. So now I'm gonna go through my thoughts and see what comes up. So the first card we got, I pulled, was this card called the Science card. So I'm using the Thoth deck, and this is the Six of Swords. This is the Science card. This is a Mercury in Aquarius card. And when I think about this card, I am seeing that you think about this like focal points with all of those swords, they are approaching it's like approaching a topic from all these different angles. That's what good scientists should do, right? They should avoid confirmation bias by making sure that the results are reproducible and uh, making sure that they are taking care of any possible confounders. Science. So we get the science card, and Mercury is about our thinking, mind. Uranus provides a way of doing that in perhaps an unconventional way, or a unique way. Uranus is, or I mean, Aries is ruled by Uranus. God, it is getting late. I am tripping up my words. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and Aquarius is the sign that is also an air sign. So it's also a thinking sign. Anyway, let's see what else I hold and then fuse this together. So another card that I got was the High Priestess. And when I look at this card, let's see if I can put it in this. To me, the High Priestess is about trusting your intuition. It is about connecting with nature. It is about, if you are asked to do something, right? Like, do you want to go to this event? Do you want to do this thing? And you get immediate, like, no, I don't. Like, it's about listening to that. This is also about, like, do you feel a drive for the project? Or do you feel a drive to go for a drive? Do you feel a drive to go out to nature? Like, this, at the heart of it, is about connecting with your intuition. Connect with yourself. Maybe practice some tarot. Okay. The third card that I pulled is this Prince of Dis. And this guy, he is sitting at like a weird angle. The bowl is going forward. When I think about this guy, there's a few things. One, he's naked. So there is something there about like being honest, being truthful. There's also something about, so because he is the Prince of this being an earth-based card, it is about this material realm. So it is about, maybe thinking about what it is that you want to build. Like, what do you want to manifest? What do you want to build, right? We're going to connect this to a new moon, right? New moons are a great time for dreaming, of trying to imagine what it is that you want to bring forth. What do you want to manifest? And I think there, using your imagination about, your intuition, your imagination. Again, what do you want to manifest? And the science card, these swords, if you're thinking about what it is that you want to manifest, think about it from all those different angles, right? Like I always think about those children's stories in which I can't think about an exact example, but those stories in which, like, you get three wishes from a genie, and of course, the kid says something like, I want $1 million or whatever, right? But then there's a consequence that was unforeseen. And anytime we wish or we try to bring something forward, there's also often a consequence to that. And I think it's important to think about those consequences. How is this actually going to work in reality? Like, yeah, you say you want this. Maybe you want a boyfriend, you want a girlfriend, you want a house, you want a dog, you want a cat, whatever. You want a podcast, whatever. How is it actually going to work? How, like, the day to day, right? How's it going to work? And so that's what I think about the science card. If we're talking about manifestation, about um, this from a reality standpoint, let's think about it. Think about the thing that you want to manifest, because we can get really lost in our intuition and our dreaming sides, right? This is a very lovely card, this High Priestess, right? You can get lost in this trip that she is providing. And again, this prince, he's bringing forth the thing that you're trying to manifest. But I think the science card is really asking us to think carefully, think about it from every single angle. What do we actually want to bring in? What is it that we want to bring in? All right. So again, I hope that you found this interesting, found this educational. My goal is to continue with my astrological studies and to update you on the comings and goings in the sky. But too long didn't listen. Um, a way to boil this down is that this new moon, I think, is very intense. And when it comes to the mundane level, and when I say mundane, I'm talking about mundane astrology. So, like the happenings of people, not just like not boringness. But when it comes to the mundane level, I think that it could be it provides signs that it could be a little um, uh, violent. Okay, I will say that. I again would not be in crowds if I could avoid it. Um, that's my advice. You can take it or leave it. That is your choice. I'm not forcing you to do anything. Um, but I think that this new moon is really asking you what it is that you really want, and really think critically about how that would actually function and how you can actually make that happen. Like, let's be realistic here. Anyway, my goal is to return probably in about a month or so and get other things kind of set up. So you will be able to find me elsewhere. My goal is to put this up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, put little clips out on TikTok, on Instagram, although those apps just feel weird. These days, I'm pushed a lot of content that I just don't care. And I think that it really loves divisive content. It is nearing 11 p.m. as I sit here on a Monday evening, and I wish you a good day, good night, whenever you're listening to this. I hope that you have a good moon, good new moon, that you make the most of it. And we will leave it at that. Just be prepared for this new moon.